Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one who fears God and hates evil. Job 1, verses 6 and verses 8. From the experience of Job, we find many truths given to us. Some of them are as follows. Satan is a created being, originally created by God as a righteous angel, who sometime in eternity past fell, and who, in fact, led a revolution against God, a conflict which continues even to this hour. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 and 15, and Ezekiel 28, 13 through 19. We learn that Satan must appear before the Lord periodically to give account of himself. We learn from chapters 2 and 3 of Job that Satan can do only what the Lord allows him to do, and no more. In other words, Satan has to ask permission for whatever he desires to do, and then minutely must follow directions laid down by the Lord. We learn from Job's three friends the impudence, of man and his efforts. With Eliphaz, it was human experience. With Bildad, human tradition. And with Zophar, human merit. We learn from all this that everything that happened to a believer, or happens to a believer, irrespective of what it is to be, is either caused by the Lord or allowed by the Lord. Of course, the Lord never causes any believer to sin, but he does allow such, that is, if a believer is so inclined. However, the penalty is always posted. We learn that the discovery of the deep corruption of the heart is the most painful and humbling that a believer can make. So the patriarch had to crucify all his goodness as truth, as all his badness, and sat in ashes wood as a public confession that he merited death because of his sin-defiled nature. This moral principle governs the salvation of the sinner as well as the sanctification of the saint. We learn from the narrative of Job that everyone had to change except God. Job had to humble himself and pray for God to bless the three friends who had so despitefully used and persecuted him. The three friends had to confess themselves worthy of death and to seek forgiveness from God through the precious blood of Christ, as foreshadowed in the sacrifices in chapter 42. We also learn that Job's latter end was better than his beginning. God gave him twice as much as he had before, and such is ever the result in the spiritual life. Increased spiritual wealth results from the death of self, the death of bad self, and also of good self. So the subject of this book is not how God justifies a sinner, but how he sanctifies a saint. Consequently, none but a good man could have been chosen for the process or have profited from it. It is plain to all that a wicked man should die to self, but that a perfect man should also need to die to self is not so clear. And yet this is the offense of the cross. All the goodness and beauty which men recognize in themselves and in others must be nailed in death to the cross, and the only man who is to live must be the risen man, Jesus Christ. True self-abhorrence comes not from self-examination, but in looking away from self to Jesus, the perfecter and author